I think it's fair to say that in the last couple months, we've actually shifted from sort of a performance-centric perspective to an availability-centric perspective. Like we went from 10,000 people working at home to 250,000 people working at home. Pretty dramatic. And therefore, the expectation of sub-second response time at home was effectively null, right? They're kind of fine with 2 to 3 seconds. But since they're working 6 a.m. till midnight in their own time zone, which equates to significantly equivalent to 24 hours for any one of these applications, it has changed dramatically when you can do any operations on these applications. So now I have to think about more about availability versus performance, and then availability from home all the way to cloud, all the way to data center and back. And that adds a significant amount of complexity. I've got to collect data not only in the IT sense, but in the application usage sense, and even on the network paths all the way up to and including the laptop. And all that needs to be analyzed as if I have 250,000 endpoints to which I have to analyze on a per application layer. It is complex. And as you can imagine, with big organizations like this, we have all the tools, and all the tools are distributed in 1,000 data centers, and I have to collect all that data and try to make sense out of it, especially when it's discipline by discipline, right? The storage has a different set of tools than the compute, than the networking, and you have to bring it all together. It's not easy, but definitely if I were to compare performance versus availability, it's availability.
Yeah, so we, even though we're not as large as Hitachi, we have pretty much every tool under the sun that you can think of monitoring each one of our areas. So we do have tool sets that have been deployed, across the stack. It's kind of representative of how our teams are running today, somewhat in silos. Our approach right now is primarily to look at process, especially on the reactive side, of how do we number one, track these type of issues that are going on, is monitoring, and then what do we do about it, right? Because regardless of whether it's a proactive or reactive kind of tool set you're using, AI or ML, there's some kind of activity and process behind the scenes that needs to be done.
So, what we try to build is too much information is dangerous, because we don't want to give business leader, beeping red, yellow, green dashboards, and they're like, oh, why is the memory going down? Like, you don't need to worry about it. We are in control. So I think instrumentation and telemetry as a topic, what's very important is to identify the right scope and the depth of what needs to be done. Because though you want to be proactive, you do not want to be in a situation where you're getting thousands of log views, but have we used it to the best of the ability? I think that's where it's very, very important to use the tool to the right solution. So we do have a single pane of glass through all the environments where we talk database, networks, capacity, CPU, server, by application or by product, depending upon how the company is. But I think the trick is to get it right and do it in chunks rather than trying to digest everything at one instance.
So we have a pretty simple business, being a distribution company. It's all about availability, service, and price. And of those two, what customers really is most important to them is product availability and service. So that reflects through Net Promoter Scores, which directly reflects on how our services are coming from an IT perspective. So we within our environment, we have mechanisms in place, what we call heartbeats. So it's pretty rudimentary. We don't have an AI ops environment, but we have an environment in which we have heartbeats going throughout all our key applications that are essentially checking objects every couple of seconds and reporting back on those in terms of performance, etc. So if an object's not reporting back or the performance is slow, an alert is going out, and our team can proactively deal with that. Because we're a totally cloud-based environment, except for our ERP, which is in process right now, the team can then jump on that. They can swap out instances. They can be proactively addressing where the functions are. When I say heartbeats, it might be something like pulling up inventory. It might be entering an order. It's down to a granular level. So we choose key applications. So that's the omni-channel environment, our online transaction. And we choose things like our inventory management system. And so it's pretty rudimentary, but we do those sorts of things.
And our approach to meet the challenge of keeping our IT production operation is running during these times and meeting all SLAs and customer expectation is based on a set of principles we live by. And these principles are: we are accessible and responsive to our customers, we are transparent by communicating status, performance, and insights, we employ best practices to manage business technology. So we're not informational technology, we are business technology. It's completely changed our landscape, it completely changed our relationship with business, and also our capabilities of technology of Metrolinx really brought us up. So as we analyze our service, application, and infrastructure, it's all done with a set of data-driven activities, and we do it in 4 key areas. And I will give as example one of them, that's service availability. And as part of continuous service improvement, as we face everything with data analytics only makes sense if you continuously improve. Enhancing service resiliency for our business technology team, it was introduced new enhanced KPIs that also need quite big difference. And when I started at Metrolinx, I wanted to change all of our KPIs. So our KPIs has much more meaning and, not only standard, but also become meaningful and ambitious KPIs. All of these KPIs are very closely monitored to improve availability and performance of all critical applications and infrastructure. And our system resiliency KPI are targeted with overall of 99.9.
The one thing I've maybe noticed over the last few months is I have a lot of parcels from vendors like Amazon arrive at my house, and probably you do as well. And when I've looked at my behavior in the way I've engaged with services in the past, I've always gone to a few things. So in the UK, if I want to buy clothes for my children, I've gone to John Lewis. And I always go to John Lewis because it's reliable, it works, that type of thing. But over COVID, I've really changed my habits. And I'm after an experience and prepared to move around for the experience. I've even noticed my children, they're 5 and 6 year old and they had to be homeschooled over a virtual learning platform. So we dug out the 2 iPads, repaired the screens on them from the drawer, found the chargers, and off they went. And it was amazing to see how fickle they were. They would use one service and it didn't work, so they would change. And they'd change in an instant. Now, I know they're an extreme example, but they don't care how the service actually works underneath. I only found out recently that our Zoom implementation at Splunk has 5 different services holding it together. Should I care about that? No, someone cares about it and that's good. But when we actually start to look at how do I get an experience out to market, whether that's internal or external, it's just that very thing. So I can't remember who spoke about it. I think it was Eric, yourself, with your mission critical services. It's not taking, is the database there? Is the network okay? Yeah, those are important, but what service does that really go and impact? So what we've started looking at when we speak to our customers is, what services do you care about from an experience point of view and critical? And then how do we start to look at the vertical kind of technologies and horizontal technologies from them and start to pick those leading indicators? When we get that right, we can start to use kind of log traces and metrics to give early warning paths to where has gone wrong and then deep dive to MTTR. And only then can you start to look at things like predictive and maybe even care about predictive and starting to look at that service. I think that for me is kind of everything, that shift in consumer experience. Kind of one last data point. I'm so sorry being a Canadian audience that I'm going to use a US example, but McKinsey showed that in the US, and I know they're behind, but they've had 10 years worth of e-commerce penetration in the last 3 months. 75% of consumers have tried new brands, and 45% of them said they'll incorporate their new brands in the post-COVID world. And it just shows that digital native change and what people expect in the business world is the same as their consumer life as well.